Welcome everybody. I'm Taylor Sharp. I'm the one of the chapter co-coordinators here for the FileMaker Pro user group in Dallas, Texas. We're here at the Harmonic Data Studios up here in Addison in North Dallas, and we're glad to be here. We're all getting in the Christmas and holiday spirits this time of year. Greg Price is on with us too. He and I are the chapter co-coordinators that help make this happen, and we have the Harmonic guys here that provide the facilities, and we really appreciate that. They're one of the Claris Platinum providers. So we're going to start off with announcements. Greg, do you want to give us a couple of announcements there?
The only one that I have right now is anybody who hasn't already signed up, Claris Engage is February 6th to 8th, and registration is open right now. As we've mentioned before, and it bears mentioning again, the hotels are up to you to reserve for yourself. There are several in the area, and they have a number of them listed on their website. I believe, have we put a link on the FMPUG page for this? I mean, you can, and pretty much whether or not we did, you can go ahead and Google it and find it very, very easily under the registration and on the Claris website.
But what are they charging now?
That's a good question. I did it right when they first came out with it. Let me go ahead and pull this up really quickly. Sign up. It looks like it's $1,300.
Okay, there we go. Get out your credit cards.
Yep. And the training courses, there is a training course, I think on the first day, that would be February 6th. And that is, I think, an extra $550 for the training, regardless of the level that you're taking.
Good. Okay, well, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be staying at the Courtyard, Marriott Courtyard. There are a whole bunch of different hotels up in what they call the Domain area of Austin. And we won't be in one big hotel like we've been in the past. But anyway, we'll see how this works. It'll be interesting being at the Apple campus and seeing what that is exactly like. FYI, I don't know if any of you guys are mountain bikers out there or anything, but it's right in the middle of a bunch of mountain bike trails, the Ninja Trails and some others that are around there. And I'm going to be there the weekend before riding the trails. So if you happen to be there the weekend before and you're like mountain bike trails, get in touch with me. Be good to ride with you out there. Fred, you going to ride?
Oh, no, I probably won't bring my bike. Mine's a road bike.
Okay. Fred's thinking about it. Anyway, okay. I can't think of any other announcements other than the big Engage thing. So everybody hopefully will join us there. This next month will be presented by Michael Wallace, who's going to talk about artificial intelligence in FileMaker. So it's like Chat GPT and FileMaker, which is what Ray and I were just talking about. So if you want to know how to make that happen, certainly plan on being here next month, which will be the January kickoff 2024. Hard to believe we're already in 2024. So, okay, so yes.
The new Claris Connect Expert certification is out.
Oh, okay. We're being reminded here that the Claris Connect Expert Connection, it's the expert. They just had the regular one out before.
They had what was it, beginner and intermediate, and now the expert is out for Claris Connect.
Okay, so Paul's giving us the update on that. I need to get on the Connect bandwagon. I haven't done that yet. So, but anyway,
Just waiting for
waiting for Michael Strange to set the pace. So
I got it up on the screen how long it's getting, so you'll think I'm here.
okay, well that should be good. I've gotten several of the other certifications done. So there's the server and the associate and the specialist, I think. So they're not. I think the specialist is about almost 3-hour video and then a test. So Other than it kind of takes a while, it's not that hard. It's certainly easier than what we used to do in the previous certifications. So if you had a hard time with the previous certifications, these are, in my opinion, a lot easier. So FileMaker API script features. Hopefully you've heard of API, application programming interfaces, RESTful calls over the RESTful structure framework. I'm going to assume that if you're in this presentation that you already know about APIs, you have some background in it, and so we're going to assume you've already dealt with FileMaker API. And I know that that will not be true for some people. And so what we have here is, for those who would like to know more about it and want to wade in themselves on the details of how it works, we've got a couple of URLs here that will give the Claris guide. Let me get back to where we are. So this is the Claris guide right here on how to use the API. And they also have a YouTube thing that Claris made at the last DevCon that tells you how long ago it was, but of how the API works. But I will tell you, if you really are wanting to learn how things work, Productive Computing, Mark Rochelle, and what's his brother's name? I forget. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Out in Los Angeles, they've put together a good little video that's right there at their little university. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to teach you how to make a RESTful call. And if you think RESTful calls are complicated, every time you've gone to a web page and put a domain name in, you've made at least half of a RESTful call right there. The other half is the payload part that you don't see, but people think that this API thing and RESTful calls are something magic, and if you've been using a web browser and going to web pages, you've been doing that for a decade or more. And so, yes, you are using it. You just didn't realize you were using it. So this is getting FileMaker to better use these things. And so FileMaker Server comes with a RESTful API service that other services can call and get that information from FileMaker. And so that helps if you want to integrate. The opposite direction is FileMaker calling to another RESTful API. Like, for example, next month we're going to look at calling the ChatGPT API, and then it returns results, and I do something in FileMaker. But what if you want to go the other way around? You want some service, maybe it's your headquarters or some other company wants to call and get your information out of FileMaker. That's great. We've got an API. It's based on the layout that you're in and the fields that you've put in that layout. And if you've played with that scenario, you know about some of those limitations. If you remove a field, suddenly they can't get to it. But there are all kinds of little things to actually making that work. And we're not going to really go into that part of things. We're just going to look at one particular scenario where people are calling things. So this means other services can call and get, basically just think of getting a spreadsheet of data, of records out of one of your tables or multiple tables or portals of related tables, and it returns as JSON, JavaScript, object notation. Hopefully, if you're going to get involved in anything about APIs, almost all the data comes back in JSON. Some of it comes back in XML, but most of it is JSON. So FileMaker, unfortunately, includes a lot of features that we've covered in the past on how those work. But the scenario I'm going to get into is, okay, so FileMaker has this API, and maybe I've got other services connecting into it. But the scenario I have is I want something else to connect to my system, and I want to have some very specific controls on it because, say, in the case that we're going to talk about today, I've got permission to use one of my clients' screen, their user interface that we're going to show here. And so they are a graphics company called JPT Graphics, and they do all their production work in FileMaker. So they've got artists that are making graphics and setting up with printers and getting things done, and it's for printing on paper and signs and pins and cups and all those kind of things. And they specialize in the apartment leasing industry, so residential stuff. So if you've ever been to an apartment and they have the pool out back and they've got pool instruction signs or whatever, or you got the pamphlets on the monthly special sent out, well, this is the company that does that. So they're mostly graphic artists. So they're doing this all in FileMaker. However, they want to have their clients to be able to, one of the issues of every business is invoicing. So how are you going to get invoices out to clients? And then what if they lose the invoice you sent there, it didn't show up in the mail, or more likely it went to their spam folder, and they want to be able to check on what their invoices are. So one of the traditional ways is they phone you up and say, fax it to me, or email it to me. And that's how you can get a statement and find out what's open. However, the modern way that we're doing this, and this is just like logging into Amazon, you can go in and say, give me a list of my orders, and in the case if you've got credit open to them, you can see which things haven't been paid, when they're due, and those kind of things. So basically an online statement system they wanted to be able to get to their clients. So now I want you to think, as a FileMaker developer here, I'm thinking, I've got this system, I got these graphics people working in this company, and I've got the privileges set up for all of them, and there's clearly things that, I want the staff to have access to everything in there. And then, certain things like the HR stuff only, like the HR manager and the owner have access to. But we've got all that worked out. And now I suddenly want to have clients getting data out of this system that has all this invoicing information. Well, you have to realize that you want a very controlled access of that data, because I don't want you to see your data and vice versa, So obviously FileMaker comes with a very robust security system that you could set up based on, who the user is, the, what they can see, but that also gets into doing, security control calculations for every user that's in there. And that can get complicated, and if you make a mistake, suddenly people see things they're not supposed to. So I want to, from a FileMaker perspective, very much control specific requests. So first of all, I'm going to have these users logging in, and I need them to be able to access WebDirect. And if you don't have an account, you don't get in. So the only way to get in anonymously is with a guest account. Okay, great. So we have a guest account. People can log in. But if you want that to work for everybody when they first log in, well, guess what? That means all the staff, when they try to log in, are going to log in as a guest. Well, you don't want your staff logging in as guest. And you want it to auto remember what's in their password shortcut keychain or whatever, and you don't want them to have to log in as guests, then re-log in as themselves, and all those little hassles. So the workaround in FileMaker is you just create another FileMaker file that's on the same server that is going to have just guest account that automatically logs in. That way these people log in and they're on a guest account, and then you can add some additional ERAT security on whatever you want to do. Basically, they're not going to have a full FileMaker security account, but you can have something that says, give me your email and whatever password you've saved in their Rolodex for that person record. And so that's what we've in essence set up for them to be able to log in. Now, that's gotten them in on this guest separate file, but that's not getting them to get the main information from our main file that we have that all the production work is being done on. So now the issue is, I would like them to be able to make requests to get that information. So the traditional way we would do that is we would make a connection between the two different databases, and then that way we can have a table occurrence of the main production database that shows up in the guest table database, and that way they can then see the information. But the problem you have then on the security is you don't want them to be able to access a table that sees everything in a table, and you really want them to see not just one table, but a bunch of tables. You want to see the company table, the people table, which is where the passwords are, the invoicing table, the orders table, all these different tables, but you only want very select information from each of those tables. So how are you going to figure out security just to get the information that you want? And using the FileMaker security for everything is going to be very cumbersome. So the way that I get around this is, now that you've got this guest file over here, I'm going to have it, instead of having live, table occurrence of the production database, I'm going to have it communicate via the data API. And that way the data API will provide just only the information I want. And some of the advantages of doing this is, by calling the data API, it returns the data that we want. Now I'm going to set these guests to be able to get in on a table where they cannot really see any data over on the other side, other than I'm going to create a dummy table that really doesn't have any records in it, a report table. But we're looking at being able to granularly get specific information for a customer, and only that information and nothing else. And so the tool that I'm using is, instead of having FileMaker have live table occurrence connection to the production database, I'm going to make a data API call. Now, if you're making data API calls, you in essence are getting access to everything that's in that label, that layout, or whatever that table occurrence is. And I don't want to even mess with all the security on that. So what I have done to solve this problem is, I have created a script on the main production database that runs at full access, so I don't have to worry about the privilege sets that it's going to. And that script will gather all the information that this particular guest needs and return that information. Now, normally, if you've done the data API, you're figuring that out all in your data API call. But in this case here, no, I want to granularly control that with a FileMaker script, and then have that script return the JSON result of what I need. In other words, the invoices and the, what's been paid and all those things, and only that information. And I'm going to return it just specifically as a script result. Now, if you look at, and it's obvious that Claris didn't think much about this, because if we look over here, okay, so this is Claris's instructions on how to run a script through the data API. And basically, whoever was thinking about this is, I want to tell it to run some batch thing or start some process, or I don't know, whatever. They were not thinking about, I would like to return script result stuff. Hence, even the example they give here, this is where your response is. They don't even show the script result response. I don't even know why. I mean, they totally leave it out. The right below script error comes script response, and this is what you put in your exit script, comes back here, and this shows up in your data API call. So instead of getting data back, you get a script result back, and that script result is not just any of those fields in there. It's granularly what I wrote in this script to say, only return this data formatted this way in this JSON, and I can be very granular in the security on what they're seeing and making sure that they're not seeing anything else. So I'm using the data API to call from one FileMaker file to another FileMaker file. I'm not using FileMaker sharing. I'm using the data API to do it. I'm telling it to run a script that is actually going to run as full access, so I don't have to worry about, the script will already know what tables and data it's getting, and making sure it's only getting that information, and then returning that script result for you to then parse out in your guest file that information for them to see it. And so I'm going to show you how this works here. This is the web server for JPT Graphics, the graphics company that has all these graphic artists that put things. And so this is the Web Direct. As you can see, it's Web Direct. It's a guest account. So since it's a guest account, it didn't ask for any password, automatically opened up. It's not my production database, so I'm not having to worry so much about security because nothing production is even seen in here. There's no connection between these databases other than my making an API call. And so I can log in here, and this is where I've done this kind of what they call ERAT security. It's not a FileMaker security, but it's just something that it goes over and looks in the people file and says if their email and their password and a couple of fields over there are there, it can then log in. I also let them reset their password if they want. But so if they log in, oh, that's good. Okay, there we go. Okay, I have made it in now that I've put my proper email in here. And this brings them to their little customer portal. In this case here, because of their situation, they're dealing with apartments, and basically you end up with a management company that manages a bunch of apartments. So quite often when you log in, you're going to be associated with several different properties, and each property would have different invoices for it. So in this case here, and so you can choose which property you want to deal with. And so I can just click on one of these and it will give me the statements. Oh my gosh. Well, the statements, apparently they have reviewed their statements and turned them off because I called them dummy files. So now we're not seeing them. I told them not to do that. Well, oh well.
This is a live demo, guys.
Live demo, guys. I'm fighting the actual production people. So anyway, if you did come here, you would be able to see a list of invoices and then click on each invoice and it would give you the actual, invoice to see it, see what the balance is, and then have the ability to click on a PayPal link to pay them and send money. But the main thing I want you to understand here is that we're using that data API to communicate things because we're trying to keep the security very simple, and we're trying to keep these customers out of production information that is not any of their business, particularly other clients. And I'm discreetly controlling that or granularly controlling that through a script that is run on the server that just returns the information that they ask for. Now, obviously, I've done this in Web Direct because it's easy to spin up and do, but you could have someone write a PHP website that is also making the same calls, your JavaScript that would call the data API and do that too. But I've found that a lot of times I've got clients that want quick and dirty, and I can give them quick and dirty in a Web Direct. It's not, the perfect web server for things, and it's probably not great if you wanted to have a whole lot of people on it. But if you just have a few customers that want to occasionally log in and check up their statements, it's fairly low weight on a FileMaker server. It's already out there, and as you can see, this is fairly easy to create. Heather's got a question here.
I have a question about the login that you're doing. When you're testing for the email, are you making an API call to a more secure user table?
I'm making an API call to the production database that goes to the companies, and within the companies is related to the people, and over there is where we've got the emails and the passwords.
So none of that authentication data lives in your guest accessible file.
Right.
I just wanted to confirm that. Okay.
Because when you're logging into it, you're logging in as guest and nothing else, and everybody has the same privilege set at that point, which is why you want to be very careful what that privilege set can see, why I don't want it to see anything else.
In this particular example, do individuals, and I don't remember what you had on if the button was there on the login screen to create a new account, is that an option in this case?
No, because they have chosen that is not something they want to do. And so the answer is if you have an email in their system, you can reset your password. If you're not in their system, you have to actually phone them, talk to your sales guy, and get added to their system because they don't want anybody in their system. There's some rules that they're talking about saying if anybody has a domain that ends in whatever the company's is, maybe we would let them create it. But for right, Well, if their company name already has a particular, apartment company, whatever.com, then they can say anybody who ends in at apartmentcompany.com, can create an account. But we haven't done that yet. Right now, basically, if you're not in there, you have to have the sales guy add you in. And once you're in there, then you can reset your password, but you can't add yourself in. But those are all just business rules of, what does the customer, want, how they want to manage that.
And then are you using something like a virtual list to display the JSON data that's come back?
I am. Heather knows what's going on. So it's either that or spin all the data out into tables. And then you have the problems if you have multiple users in there, they see the other person's info. So then security gets complicated. So that's why we go back to virtual lists, which actually didn't you give us one of our first virtual list presentations, I think? Yes. So virtual list, for you don't know, is basically where you have a dollar variable that lives on, and you're creating your records and fields are all a calculation that looks at that global variable to pull the data down. And since that global variable only exists for your account, you only see your information and you don't ever see anybody else's information. So that's the big advantage of virtual lists. So there are other things that can be done, but yes, virtual lists is how I'm doing that, and it seems to work really well. So, okay. Questions? Any other questions on this?
Do you handle data changes, or is this just a view only?
Right now, the only thing that they can do is make a payment, and they don't actually put that in. It actually is going to PayPal right now, and then the accounting people put it in. So no, in this system. You could do it, but it's, you got to be very, a lot of business rules go into what they can and can't do. And by keeping this mostly just a read-only system, that's handling a lot of the security.
If you wanted to add, minor things like, say, approvals or something on different things, so would you basically follow the same approach and send JSON back with Data API and a script on the FileMaker side?
Exactly, and that's one of the things that has been talked about, because they're the graphics company. So when you create a logo or whatever it is, approval is a big part of the process, and so that's one of the things they want down the road. But among other things in it is also being able to let them see what they're approving. and then of course, if you're doing the data API, you have to bring that over as base 64 encoded. But yes, that's all very doable. And I've been very amazed at actually how very responsive and fast the data API is in bringing things over. I will tell you, it is faster than trying to make a shared relationship between the two different files and bringing table occurrences over, because it brings over all the issues of the spider web that's out there, and so all that logic is going on. The data API is very good at pulling very discrete information and only returning that, and it's just living in that global variable when it comes back. And so it is amazing how very responsive and fast this WebDirect stuff is, even though that I'm pulling databases that literally have hundreds of thousands of invoices.
So if you had users that had different privilege levels within the system, would you then have your data API, would you run a different data API for them, or would your data API send some parameter that lets the script on the FileMaker side know what level they are, so it goes to the right layout to get the right level of data?
Yes, well, the production side has all the staff privileges, and the production people actually aren't even in the guest side ever at all themselves. They don't even have access to it. But when the guests are logging in, everything is controlled as to what they're going to do based on the call they're making to the a script in the production side of things. And that's where I am making the business rules of, did they have a email that matches that's already in there? Do they have a password that matches? And if they do, what can they see? Right now, they've started out, we're just going to show them everything, but there are some questions about, sometimes there are going to be people who just want to be able to approve art, but they're not supposed to see what the invoice is, or and vice versa. We haven't gotten to that, but obviously, because it's a script. Once I call the FileMaker script on the production side of things, I can make those business rule decisions there to determine what I want to return. And I run that script as full access so that I can grab anything. I don't have to worry about setting up new privileges. I decide in the script what information is going to come back based on who they are. And that's where I'm doing a lot of the control of things. So anyway, it's a interesting way. I've done this on several clients, and it's an interesting way to take care of things. I find that it's faster than doing the FileMaker sharing. Or the other thing is, the first way I did it was you let them log in as a guest, and that has limited access, but they're actually in the live file, production file. That's so dangerous, because if you do the wrong mistake, someone ends up in a layout, a script errors out, they end up in a layout they're not supposed to see, they see information they're not supposed to see, all those, security, you gotta make sure it's done right. And as much as everybody says we're always doing a great security system, there's always a mistake somewhere. and so you're trying to minimize the opportunities for it. And that's why making this guest file that has access directly to nothing other than through the script and the API, I'm very at the API and that script granularly controlling at that level. I'm not worried about tables where they can see more fields in them than I want them to see in a particular table. And so that's how I'm able to control that. And I also, the data API, for people who haven't worked with it, is actually very responsive. It is very fast in sending data. It's much faster than I think, going to, a FileMaker client. You can call data API information. If you just look at the raw information, arrives faster than you will see it in a FileMaker client. So, and that's because of the user interface and everything else is going with it, I understand. But it is amazing that if you have a guest file that is very light on all those things and is making a data API, it is still faster than just having a guest account on the main production system that does that. And it's been very successful. So anyway, I just I wish that Claris would put in their instructions, include some more information about how, hey, you can get, in other words, when you run a script, the data API does let you run a script, but guess what? Scripts can return information. And the exit script step that you have, the return, whatever you put in the exit script data there is what comes back in the script result of the data API. Format it as JSON, do whatever you want at the other end, and you got all kinds of power to do amazing things at that end. So anyway, I hope that we will, one of the issues too that I really haven't spent a lot of time on is there's always the issue about licensing. So it's kind of, do those users count as FileMaker users or not? And I basically get an answer from Claris from the salespeople that no, they don't, because they're not employees. Like if on the site license, they're not an employee with a W-2. They're not right, right. But they're not a named user in the system. But if you read the license, it's kind of very murky. And I wish Claris would. I wish that they would do the licensing that says if someone logs in as a guest, they don't count towards any licensing. And if they would change their licensing to do that, it would allow these type of guest accounts. Because it's the same thing as, okay, I show up at Tom Thumb or HEB, am I going to have a license for every checker that's, doing the checkout? Or do I have to license every customer that comes in the store? Well, that's ridiculous that you're licensing every customer that comes in the store. I understand licensing every checkout point of sale thing, and the person that's there. That makes sense. That's how licensing is done on almost all software. But the licensing of every customer that comes in the store is just asinine, unless you made it so cheap, but they're not making it cheap like that. So
the best response I've gotten from them, because I do a lot of data API work and had the same questions, am I out of bounds? Am I inbounds? And the best answer I got from them was along the lines of, if the intention of your product is to avoid licensing, then that's basically, that's the line they don't want you to cross.
Right. I get it that FileMaker, Claris is, they're selling licenses, so they need to have a business revenue model. But I also, their model does not follow what a lot of other database models are. And so trying to get it right, obviously we don't, we want to support and make sure that they're getting, their appropriate income, but not, their idea of, well, just buy these concurrent connections that they used to have before at super ridiculous prices was also just untenable and just didn't work with most business models to
Not just open
begin.
up more scenarios that didn't exist
So, right, and don't exist in any other, software type licensing thing. So, but anyway, so we'll see where they go. They're trying to figure out what to do with Claris Pro, and there's some talks about it being the anonymous user access web thing that will do those kind of things. Maybe that's where it's going to go. I'm having a hard time guessing them. I just hope they're not wasting money that doesn't, end up back in FileMaker. I still cringe over things like Bento and stuff like that. Say all that R&D money that we could have just put into making FileMaker better. I hope they.
This particular model is in the conversations that I had with them. This specific customer portal model was totally approved. They had no problem with that.
Yeah.
And said as much. So.
I can get the sales and the marketing guys today but if you talk to the head lawyer there, she's always trying to throw in, well, here's the language of this, and you realize that some of that language doesn't, it's one of those things that they're basically, it's come along, long as you're doing what we want, don't worry about the language. But the problem is, if at some point Claris gets unhappy with me, will they pull out the language to screw me? It's kind of like, long as we're happy with you, don't worry about the language. But then if we want to sue you, then do worry about the language. Well, that's not very tenable in the business world. And it's really hard to sell clients on that, kind of model. So.
Don't be a liar.
Yes. Okay. Well, without further ado, I think we have finished up the presentation for today. But basically, just in summary, you can use the Data API to run a script and get script results and granularly use those results in a way that you are, through just FileMaker scripting on your production system, providing very controlled responses and only that information in a way that you would want limited access by, for example, customers or outside access type people. And it can work pretty well. And I've been doing this for more and more customers, and it's pretty slick. Obviously, there are limitations with WebDirect, but if the number of connections and some of the UI, quirks that go with it, if you can live with that, it's actually pretty slick. So. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and good to see you here, and we will see everybody next month.